Okay, this demonstration is called hot and cold flasks. We have two flasks. One has cold water in it that we just got out of the refrigerator. This one has hot water in it that we just took from the coffee pot. I'm going to put a little bit of food coloring in the hot water flask just to serve, so it serves as a marker and just so you remember that it's hot. One thing that you should notice is how fast the dye is spreading around in the hot water flask. If you remember when we did the potassium permanganate lab, we discussed how how the rate of diffusion is affected by temperature. And you can see that this dye is spreading throughout the water very quickly, so that gives you, some indication of how hot it is. Actually, I'll add a little more food dye. So think about what the molecules or how the molecules are behaving right now in the hot water flask compared to how they might be behaving in the cold water flask right now. I'm going to use a little bit of water from this water bottle to top off both flasks. And here's what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to successfully invert the cold water flask onto the hot water flask. In other words, we want to put one on top of the other so that the lips or necks of the flasks are touching or are together. And we'll see what happens. All right, I'm going to use a glass plate to help us keep the waters separate first. Okay, so a glass plate is over the cold water right now, and we're going to invert this one onto the hot water. Okay, move this to the center, and here we go. Okay, so we have the cold water flask inverted on top of the hot water flask right now. The only thing that's separating them is a glass plate. So we're going to try to carefully remove the glass plate, and you can observe what happens. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the glass plate has been removed. Notice what's happening. There's actually some movement going on. The hot water is rushing up into the cold water flask, and the cold water is actually sinking down into the hot water flask. So the waters appear to be switching places. From where I stand, I can actually see a little bit of cyclic movement going on right in the neck of the flask. I think you might be able to see that too. Where the waters are passing each other, the cold water is being heated just a bit. So that's actually creating a convection current there in the neck of the flask. As the warm water is rising, it's heating the cold water, which is sinking, and it's causing some convection. So you should be describing here or explaining why is it that the hot water rushes up into the cold water flask. It appears to be defying gravity. Why is it doing that? Is it actually defying gravity? Or if not, is there some other explanation involving molecules? Can you explain that in your lab? Okay, why is the hot water rushing up? Why is the cold water sinking? what do you predict would be, how do you predict these flasks would look maybe an hour from now if we left this and we came back an hour from now to observe, what would they look like? Would both flasks be similar in color? If you said yes, then you are correct.
To give you a better idea.
Okay, Mrs. Sluter has just placed a white background against the two flasks so that you can see the color a little bit better now. Don't forget to think about or include 2 real-life applications with your explanation for this one.